Good morning, good afternoon, and maybe even good evening. We're going to kick off an amazing webinar today, Achieving CMMC 2.0 with Enable. What this is really about is technical guidance for IT teams. You are all IT folk, you are all IT pros, whether you're working for an MSP or even an IT department. Now, with that, what we'll do is if you just want to go to the next slide there, Lewis, for me.
Legalese.
Yes, the fun stuff. So this content will contain forward-looking statements regarding future product plans and development efforts, blah blah blah. What this basically means is if Lewis or myself talk about something in the future, just know that you cannot take that as a promise to deliver because product plans and priorities do change. Now, who am I and who is Lewis? Oh, wonderful. We forgot to correct this one. I meant to. I am not Lewis Pope. My name is Jason Murphy. I am the head nerd for IT Ops here at Enable, specifically for N-Central and Nsight. Lewis, if you can just give yourself a good introduction here.
Yes, I'm Lewis Pope. I'm the head nerd for security and compliance, CISFP. My background is the MSP space as well, though. So I cut my teeth doing the same jobs, the same kind of drudgery and grunt work that almost everybody else here has probably done.
Amen. Okay, so one thing I want to do is pump Lewis's tires because if you've never been to one of Lewis's office hours, he makes them quite interesting. Okay, what I would, and it's not just about being interesting. Sometimes the themes are often dry and unsexy, but Lewis obviously brings a lot of talent and a lot of pizzazz when it comes to talking about security and compliance. So if you aren't registered, please grab your phone, hit that QR code, register for his office hours. He talks about everything from things like CMMC all the way down to monthly patch management. So I would highly recommend that you hop in there and check him out. You want to hit the next one? And last but not least, let's say this: last call for Empower. We at Enable have this annual event. Last year it was in Berlin. Some of you couldn't go. This year it is in the United States of America. We're going to be doing this at Fort Lauderdale. It is a beautiful location. I was there 2 weeks ago checking out the hotel and some of the beaches. It was amazing. You're gonna love it. So please join us for that. You're all sorts of topics. If you are a business owner or if you're in sales or marketing, or if you want to get involved in our business transformation or our AMA tracks, but just know there's plenty of technical tracks as well. So check that out. You can just head on over to Google and Enable Empower. I'll bring you right to the website. But I would say check out that agenda and see if anything's going to pique your interest. And I hope to see you all there. Okay. Now, the CMMC Imperative. What we're going to do in terms of a format is going to be more like kind of Q&A and kind of like thought leadership and knowledge transfer. So I'm going to pass it on over to Lewis, who is obviously the guru when it comes to CMMC.
Thank you, Jason. So, and starting out with this, with CMMC first is just address, well, what's changed recently that's worth knowing about? Because depending on what your relationship with CMMC is, this is something you already know all of this stuff, and you just need a few technical details from us, or you're starting out and you don't know anything. So just for important things to know, November 10th of last year is whenever the final acquisition rule took effect. So the CMMC certification is now a contractual condition of award for new contracts that are being, solicited for if you're in the defense industrial base. So your primes, your subprimes, they're holding federal contracts. This is now showing up as a requirement today. The contracting officers are putting the language into the contracts and the solicitations. November 2026 is next part is phase two. That's coming up is the your mandatory CMMC third party accredited organization. So your assessment organization. So your C3PAOs, the companies that and the businesses that have been certified to go out and assess and say that somebody is in alignment with CMMC or not. Um, Most of your level two CMMC contract requirements out there, November 2026 of this year, there's a line of it of you need to be already in the middle of it, not starting, you're in the middle of it, if not finishing. Um,
Can I ask you one
and of
question about
course,
that though?
yes,
Sort of, and I, you know how audio goes. Sometimes you're still talking, or there's a break, but I'm talking over you sometimes, so I do apologize. What is the real business impact of CMMC becoming like this contractual condition of award? Like, you're not going to get the business unless you have something. So, what is if we can unpack that part?
right. So this is a hard stop for a business on their ability to hold contracts, certain types of federal contracts. If you do not meet this, you do not get the contract. That means that business loses revenue. Then what's the impact of that? Does that mean your client goes out of business and you lose a client because they've lost a main revenue stream or they don't grow it fast enough? And then for you as an MSP, it is the knock-ons of am I losing clients, but also can I gain clients because of
Right,
this?
right. Now, with phase one active and then phase two coming, I think it says in November. What should MSPs kind of prioritize? Like, what are kind of like in terms of the technical guidance? What would you recommend for like say this quarter versus the next, etc.?
So if you're going to be providing services to a client that this is part of their world and what they're concerned with, you're within scope. Whether you're going to be included in their evaluations or you're going to get your own um, assessments and attestations, you're within scope of this now. So your role as an MSP within the CMMC ecosystem is, what is delineating where the shared responsibilities exist between you and your client and their handling of CUI, controlled unclassified information. Um, as an MSP, you're most likely going to be categorized as an external service provider under CMMC. And that classification means that your tools, your processes, your methods of operation, all of your practices for how you run your business and how it interfaces with your client is part of the assessment boundary. So if you're not comfortable with somebody, an external third party auditor coming in and looking at how you actually operate, it will be a little bit of a shock the first time you kind of get involved with this, because it's not just supporting your client's efforts in compliance, it's your own compliance dependencies that you are now accountable for. And those tools that you deploy across, what we do for clients whenever you're an MSP or whenever you're an IT professional and you're in charge of the IT department and IT infrastructure for a business that's going through this. Um, the evidence, and this is the important thing, you have to be getting ready for this is mostly about evidence of what we are doing, not just are we doing the right things in the way we should, but are we maintaining the evidence and are we, uh, and is the evidence we're generating, uh, is going to be directly affecting our success or failure on our assessments whenever you go through them.
Awesome.
So, and then that brings us to, of course, well, part of that is going to be in your tool sets. If you're here today in Central, it's part of your tool set, or you're looking to make it part of your tool set. We have free trials available right now for the CMMC ready version of Incentral. It is not a silver bullet that you use this and everything is taken care of for you magically. but this is reducing significantly the amount of questions and the amount of configuration work that you have to do to make in Central something that you can use in an environment that is subject to CMMC. And I'm also going to pop that into the chat for anybody. If you're not able to use the QR code, that way you've got the link.
And Lewis, I just want to kind of expand on that one topic because when we were building CMMC in Central, I'll be honest with you, I thought this was actually going to be kind of like the silver bullet, or at least the bronze bullet. Okay, maybe it doesn't do everything, but maybe if you could talk about what some of those misconceptions are. Like, yes, I've got CMMC on Central today. Now I can start, getting those awards, those businesses, and moving upscale into federal contracts. But what and I'm sure we're gonna go through this a little bit later as well, but what what are some of those misconceptions that you find that, some of our partners are running into now?
I one is always it's the misconception you almost always have whenever you get into the realm of actual third party assessed compliance. Is that understanding where it is your responsibility, where it's your client responsibility, and having that written down. It's not vague. It's not well, we'll take care of it whenever. It is a no. There are people's names signed to obligations, and we will do these things. Um, that's really important here in the CMMC, and a lot of times, honestly, people aren't prepared for that level of you have to do what you are told you have to do. So there's a little bit of shift in culture and perception there. And I think also another is um, the extent of it, how entrenched it becomes. Because if you've never been involved in something like this, um, you're now this is a realm where if you say no to the wrong things, or you say no, we can't do certain things, it is a instant disqualifier. Where when we don't worry about these compliances, there's always that wiggle room and back and forth of, well, we're going to put these mitigating measures in place. We're not going to worry about this because it's not a concern for your environment, really. It doesn't really raise your risk profile that much. It's not worth the spend. In this arena, that that um, judgment call of we don't have to is much, much, much tighter, and you have to be very explicit about it. It's not a we don't feel like it. It's a we have a full documented programs and 50 pages of documentation and operations manual around this for why we don't have to do something this way.
Right.
And with that free trial, there's also we're doing an early advantage program for CMMC. If you're interested in using N-Central CMMC Ready version, if you start now, we're having this opportunity available for you until April 30th. Um, no cost until September 1st. So this helps you if you are in this evaluation period and you're trying to understand the can we use N-Central in the way that we're going to need to use it in these clients' environments to meet these contractual obligations around CMMC? It's it's sweat equity, not license cost that you're having to deal with at the same time while you're trying to find your way through it. Get you going faster, get things started faster. You can get audit. You can get to audit readiness faster because we are instead of us providing you with regular N-Central, where you have to figure out everything you have to do under CMMC to make it ready for CMMC, we're cutting out weeks of research time and other things you have to go through by just saying, here is a CMMC ready configuration of N-Central that will satisfy a majority of your auditor questions about what it is, how it's set up, and how it's configured.
I mean, who doesn't like a good promo? Who would we contact? If I was an MSP partner, who would I reach out to
So,
to
reach if
start?
you're interested into this, reach out to your CSM if you know who that contact point is. If not, you can leverage this QR code here, and that'll take you right to the web form to fill out and get somebody in contact with you.
Absolutely. Perfect.
All right. And there's this is a technical workshop. Let's talk some of the nitty gritty technical details. Um, you need to know what this new version of N-Central is going to look like, feel like, what your workflows are going to be like in it, how you interact with it, your teams. Maybe you have a new operational team you're bringing on board that's going to be focused on CMMC compliance and they've not used N-Central before. We have a full series of technical how-to videos geared towards CMMC inside of N-Central, ready and available for you today inside of Enable You or out on the Enable YouTube channel.
And again, for those who may not be a partner, what Lewis is really describing, other than obviously YouTube, is that a lot of our video content for Enable lives in Enable University, which is part of our partner portal. And that is me.n-able.com.
So now this is, really where a lot of questions exist around CMMC is like, okay, the regulatory foundation of it. Because if you don't understand what's being asked of you to do and why it's being asked, it makes the overall story less compelling. You're less informed and you're more, so you're blindly trying to find your way through why you're being put in a situation to deal with this. Um, Generally, CMMC is being implemented via two rules. There's the 32 CFR, which is what defines the CMMC program itself. And then there's 48 CFR DFARs for actually putting the rules, putting it into the contract, saying that if you want this federal contract, then CMMC level 1 or level 2 or level 3 is what you must achieve. Now, what's underneath that is the 110 controls around the NIST 800-171 publication, because that is what CMMC points to as here is the prescribed ways in which you are supposed to be managing systems that have sensitive, unclassified uh, CUI, controlled unclassified information. It's sensitive. It's not top secret. It's not national security, but it's still within that kind of national security realm of this information is sensitive enough that we do not want it freely floating around anywhere. Whether it's because it's contract information, it's the mix ratios of the concrete that's being used by one of your clients because they pour concrete pads for driveways on a military base. You have a client that's a small manufacturer and all they do is cut aluminum. Well, all of that schematic information about how the quality of aluminum that's being used, where it's being sourced from, who you buy it from, that's the UI. So because of that, that means that this is kind of broad. It can get into a lot of corners of a business. And we'll talk a little bit later about, how do you deal with the fact that this can be everywhere. But the 110 controls is really what it's all about. You're sitting there trying to map out where this data is, how you treat it, how you take care of it, how do you secure it. Whenever you're going through this, you have to, when you're going through the assessment, you have to get 88 of 110 controls to get conditional certification. So you have to go through the assessment and be able to say, yes, we're doing these 88 things of 110. And then you get a conditional certification. Then they'll give you a POAM, which is your plan of actions and milestones, which is your gap analysis saying, you've gotten these, you're missing these things, you have until this date to implement the changes. But there are 14 high value controls that are, you don't meet those controls, it's a hard no. We are not giving you a conditional certification. You got to start over again. You've got so much stuff missing.
Lewis, do you have an example of what one of those might be? I'm sure you probably know all 14, but, even if you can just name 1 or 2.
It's a lot of it is most of the highest rated ones are the ones around identity and account access. So your remote, how the data one being able to attest to where the data is actually stored, having the data flows around where that data goes, and then how do people remotely, if they remotely access it, how are they remotely asking? Those are two high weighted set of controls in the family of controls that if you're missing those, it's almost immediate. Yeah, you're not ready for this kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it's so one of the things when I was kinda learning about CMMC is really the aspect of conditional, right? Like, a conditional certification, but then also including these poems to say, "Listen, we know there's some gaps, you have until X." So
Right.
that kinda concept is advantageous, obviously, because, you at least know, how long, it may take you to get there.
Right. And that's important to figure out, though, especially with you especially with businesses that are either starting or thinking about undergoing this. Um, those timelines are becoming more and more compressed over time. Whereas, um, when this first came about, there was a lot of breathing room. There was a lot of time to get to it. That breathing room is shrinking very quickly. And that's why, if this is a concern for you, I highly encourage you grab that free trial that we're not going to be, you've got free for a while so that you can go ahead and start working on it because you can't, it's not going to be contact an assessor, tell them you want to be assessed. They come in the next day and they work with you. They're gonna be they're backlogged. They're not freely available. You need to have as much work done already before they even walk through the door.
Right.
And part of that getting ready and doing what work you can do, um, that's the purpose and point of the CMMC Ready version of Incentral. It's going to help you meet the level 2 requirements for CMMC level 2. It's going to help you meet those requirements around its use much, much more easily. It's not going to be a 2-week back and forth with that assessor. It's going to be a here's the documentation. Here's the shared responsibility matrix, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And it just shortens that timeline and what you have to do there so much. The CMMC Ready version is it's built to satisfy the audit.
Now, I know you're doing this already, but I guess in the simplest customer-friendly description of what CMMC Ready is, can you give us the Lewis ELI 5 on what this actually is, like, what we're bringing to the table here?
So this is we have already through our engagement with a third party assessor to evaluate Central's readiness and preparedness for satisfying the audits. We've already went through and we said, yes, we're disabling these features. We are pulling out these capabilities. We are turning off things. That way you're not sitting there and having, say you had the regular version of Incentral, the assessor asks you, what are you doing around the use of Take Control? If you have to answer that question by yourself without us being involved in it, it can be a challenging and lengthy back and forth with the assessor of, okay, where's your documentation? Where's your security configuration information? How are you monitoring for this? How are you alerting for it? What are you doing whenever the alert goes off? Uh, that entire section of having to define everything for that goes away because it does not exist in this version of Incentral. And there's other elements within it, like there's other things where the connectivity to outside resources would make it even more complicated for you to be able to get through your assessment. Those are disabled automatically. They're not a concern. It brings those things out of scope and it makes the assessment process just much smoother for you. You don't have to find and guess about evidence and configurations. It's already set up for you that way.
Right, and we're gonna give you the proof to be able to, provide, the auditor, that level of, what's the right word? Accreditation, is that right?
Is the evidence that supports your claim that
Right.
yes, we are CMMC compliant and we're adhering to these different, NIST 800, 171 controls, and even more. And that's an important thing of we're making it very, very easy for you to have in central in a CMMC ready way available for you. But then if you're an MSP or an IT professional, you're going to be using N-Central to start reaching out into an environment and starting to implement CMMC controls with N-Central into the environment. And that'll be, the continuous network scanning, IT asset management that's a requirement, the monitoring capabilities with the service monitors inside of N-Central, the ability to manage, deploy software packages, device configuration policies, being able to monitor configuration for an endpoint, the patch and vulnerability, being able to, more specifically, the patch being a part of your vulnerability mitigation and remediation processes. Um, you're going to be using all of those capabilities of N-Central to go do these necessary tasks in the CMMC subject environment so that the larger environment can then come into compliance with what CMMC requires.
Quick question, only because if I had to, start from scratch as an MSP, I know very little about CMMC, or even NIST. When I'm looking at this, right, in terms of the CMMC controls, you know, where do I where do I start? Like, is it just, hey, now I got to download in Central and kind of figure it out? What would be the first thing you would tell someone to do to kind of get this off the ground within their org? Because oftentimes that's how it has to happen. Techs are kind of socializing this either one opportunity or two necessity within their org to be able to get it going.
Right. So since this is the technical workshop, I think the answer is grab the free trial and start working with it. Install it in your environment that you're going to have to, or a similar environment to what you're going to have to host this in. Go ahead and start working through. Okay, here is our standard operating procedures. Do we have to change those because of the requirements of CMMC and our use of this CMMC, ready tool? And that's the long, boring part of it is taking what your current processes, procedures are, making sure those align with CMMC and that you're implementing those through in central in an CMMC compliant way. Um, and somebody brought up there was a question that came through, uh, was on this being on-prem or cloud hosted. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth later, but that's another one of those things of this is a self-host option. And the reason we're making it available as a self-host option is because that vastly reduces the operational overhead of you going and contracting out this from a third party to where they're hosting it, because then that gets you into FedRAMP territory. That gets you into I'm paying a premium for a FedRAMP hosted version of this service rather than simply us running it within the client's environment or in another CUI enclave. And that aligns with another question somebody asked about, like HIPAA, are there BAs required? And not quite. It's are you within scope of the assessment? There wouldn't necessarily be a BA to sign or an equivalent for that, other than just the contract language and the shared responsibility matrix that you're going to create for, if you're an MSP, for yourself and the client. That's the equivalent of the BA agreement of here's your responsibilities, here's my responsibilities, and we're both signing that we are going to be accountable for these responsibilities.
Lewis, I think there's a good question, and I don't want to avoid it because it is tough, but I know you can handle it. Is N Central CMMC certified?
That's a great question because there's no such thing. Um,
That is correct.
there is attestations. What we did, and we've got this in a few slides, and I'll show it off, and everybody will be able to grab it and read it for yourself. We had a third party external assessor evaluate Incentral for its readiness to get through and satisfy a CMMC audit and assessment to level 2. Um, and I don't want to say that's the best you get, because the best you get is getting through your actual assessment, is actually getting through a C3PAO, evaluating your environment and signing off on it. That's the ultimate certification there.
The only reason why I wanted to bring it up because I get this question all the time. So is N Central's, CMMC certified? Well, it's not that easy, right?
Right.
And Central is going to be a part of your CMMC journey, and we've done the work to make sure that it is CMMC ready.
Yes. And we have success stories for this. This isn't a brand new, untouched uh, arena that we've never been in before. You have always had the opportunity and the capability to take regular and central and take all of the responsibility on yourself to make it ready for a CMMC audit. Of course, that's a lot of effort, a lot of time. You were being asked of a lot, but we have had some of our MSP partners out there successfully get through that before. But with this new version of CMMC Ready and Central, it's all about accelerating it, making it faster. In Tech Hawaii, they were able to get through their CMMC 2.0 compliance assessments and accreditation using Incentral. And also, I believe Adlumin as well, because Adlumin gets treated as an SPA. We'll talk about that later as well. And this is just a quick, if you want to see that story, you want to kind of see somebody else has done it. There's the QR code for it there, but also, and I'll put that in the chat for everybody, so you've got that if you're not going to be able to use the QR codes. And then that brings us to probably one of the more important items is the how do you know that Incentral is CMMC ready? And that's our third party assessment we had done by Coalfire. And there's the attestation letter we have available for you to grab, download, and read, and it explains the reasoning behind the what and why of the use of Incentral in a CMMC compliant manner.
Right. And this is about as certified as software can get, right? We've actually gone out to a major CMMC auditor in terms of coal fire evaluating our readiness for CMMC.
And and again, this is one of the best pieces of evidence you're going to have until you get to the final, you've been through your C3PAO assessment and they say yes. So that is also, that evidence part, I believe, or knowing and understanding where this CMMC ready version of Incentral you're going to be using, that you have, we have success stories of people doing it. We have that third party attestation letter that it can be used and it's ready for it. Then there's like, okay, rubber meets the road. We're doing it in the environment. Is this a CUI asset or is this a security protection asset? Because how you're treating Incentral as one of these two classifications in the environment is going to be dictated by the way the environment is configured and the assessor. The assessor is going to be the person that has the last word to say, this has to be treated as a CUI asset, or this must be treated or it can be treated as a security protection asset.
Well, that begs also the question, like, how can MSPs prevent management platforms from handling CUI data? Like, do you have, like, and this gets into process, sorry. Um, but it's one of those things where I'm sure you can make some recommendations.
Right, and this is, first is the challenge of, well, what is CUI? What qualifies as CUI data? And do we have a compliance officer at the client? Do we have a identification and marking program for that CUI data in the client's environment? Because if you don't have that awareness, if you don't have that data flow, if you don't have that designation, then you are in a situation of, well, we have to treat the entire environment as though it is going to access and process CUI. Therefore, everything must be set to those standards. And that's expansive, scope creep, expensive. Or it's a nope, we know where things are, we know where CUI is, we know that we have it sitting over here, and then we're going to be able to treat Essential as a security protection asset. It's not holding or processing CUI itself, it's just helping you secure and manage the systems that do.
Well, and that's a really good point, is like, what are those implications for classifying a CUI asset versus a security protection asset? Like, where, how do you know if you could just explain the delineation between those two?
Right. So the hard line is it holding, processing, or transmitting CUI? Yes, it's a CUI asset.
Got it. Okay.
No, then then it's a little bit fuzzier, but chances are then it's a security protection asset. Um, and with that delineation there's also going to be the enclave question that we'll be talking about later as well, because that is a big driver of the business decisions, not necessarily well, the business decisions that are going to be made that's then going to have to drive technical decisions. So I guess a good thing also is to highlight, not just that delineation there between security protection assets, in central being treated as one versus the other, but how did we even get it to the point where it could be CMMC ready? So that is first and foremost is making it a self-host version only. That means it is going to be exempt from a lot of additional controls, a lot of additional processes and procedures, a lot more different licensing, a lot of different, honestly, caching, changing of hands of cache for licensing and other things. Because it's a very simple of if it's self-host, great. You can set it up in a way that's secure and can satisfy CMMC. But if it's going to be a cloud hosted solution that you're buying from a third party, automatically now it has to be FedRAMP. It has to be in the FedRAMP marketplace. And that drives up the cost. And that's one of the reasons why we were purposeful about making the CMMC ready version, is because that is not, um, for a lot of businesses, that is not achievable. That is going to be at a price point that is prohibitive for multiple different reasons. Um, and then we disabled different features inside of, so Pendo disabled, Intune integration disabled, the unified framework agent, because that reaches out and talks to a lot of cloud resources, that's disabled. Um, and that was a core. Yep, it reaches out, it talks to a web resource out there in the world that would put it in scope of needing FedRAMP. So let's turn that off so that we can keep complexity and cost down.
Awesome. Now, my other question, only because it's glaring on the screen, it says self-hosted only. Um, Obviously, hopefully, we have a good idea of what FedRAMP is. That is what SaaS providers like Enable can do to put their environments into, a FedRAMP certified data center. Obviously, we went with a CMMC ready self-hosted option. Um, why didn't we go further and just say, hey, we're going to put this in our Azure FedGov? Can you explain the nuance on that one? Because
Right.
I know a lot of the partners I've worked with so far are all going Azure FedGov. Some have done AWS. Um, but can you talk about a little bit about the why we did that and what our partners need to do?
Right. One is, I think the two primary things are just time to market and the cost, because making that decision to go FedRAMP is pro. It's expensive. It is very expensive, and it will make whatever solution is hosted in that FedRAMP be more expensive. And kind of one of the intents and purpose of this is to how do we make it fast to implement, and how do we keep it at a price point where the MSPs and the small IT service providers and the small in-house IT operations for medium-sized and small businesses, we did not want this to be another barrier of why they have to make the business evaluation of this is going to cost us too much to pursue.
Now, there was a question from Andrew. How does the Ecoverse work with all of this? What I can tell you, Andrew, is that it doesn't. The reason being is that those Ecoverse features, and some of them are listed here, like vulnerability management and some other ones, have been pulled out. The reason being is that if we were to put something like that in, we would then have to start getting into FedRAMP certified, right? Now, what I can tell you is that that is part of our roadmap. And again, I knew I was going to go somewhere in roadmap today, so I knew I was going to talk roadmap, but just know that we are still investigating the viability of FedRAMP. So it is part of our roadmap. I just don't know when we're going to get there on that.
Yep. And almost and really everything within Ecoverse is gate kept by that fact, because as soon as we make it available, then it must be FedRAMP accredited to satisfy your CMMC obligations. And obligations, the shared responsibility matrix. This is another important it's another important artifact that you're going to need. Well, you need one from us because we're part of the relationship, but you're also going to have to make your own for your clients if you're an MSP or outsourced IT. But this is, and we'll make this again, this is available for you. It's not something you have to figure this all out for yourself. This is many, many, many hours of research and time you no longer have to do. I don't have to work back and forth and ask us about it. This is a single representation of one of the access controls inside of CMMC requirements for, let's see, this is an example of where there is a responsibility from enable. It doesn't stop at, you know, simply we sold you the tool. We have our responsibilities for, building that tool and taking care of it. And our obligations to it. So this is identifying where Enable is responsible for providing the N-central platform and its core functionalities. Um, and then delineating out, well, what is your responsibilities going to be as an MSP partner or your responsibilities as a direct consuming customer of ours. And then there will be other examples within the shared responsibility matrix where it's going to be in, these are some additional access control domain items. 31.9, I believe, is one where it's the opposite, where enable is like, yeah, no, this is not our responsibility set. This is going to be something that you are responsible for on your side of the use and implementation of N-central and or the rest of your environment. So we're just this shared responsibility matrix is hundreds of questions that you don't have to figure out the answers for. They're already prepared and ready for you.
Now, one thing I did want to touch on the previous slide is like in terms of what is not in N-Central and the CMMC ready version of N-Central is how should remote access limitations be handled by the MSP and how to explain that to their customers. Now, I know we're going to get there because take control is obviously something that is much needed by any remote managed service provider. So maybe talk on that because I don't want that one to kind of go amiss on
Right.
this particular webinar.
Yeah. So that gets into actually CU enclaves and scoping strategy, because by the nature of the environments that process, store, transmit CUI, um, a tool like Take Control simply cannot be used. It's just a hard stop. No, it's not a FedRAMP accredited. It's not on the FedRAMP marketplace. Or even though we have a lot of the necessary components, we FIPS 140-3 encryption modules being used, and other things are set up and will that make it compliant. But then there's just some final things that is just a nope, sorry, you can't use it. It's a cloud hosted solution. There's international support staff. There's a whole other set of things that make it a no, you can't use it. But I think, and that isn't even just uh, an enable tool set challenge. That is you have an environment that has CUI. Guess what? All the easy options go away. As soon as it is designated as a CUI enclave, you lose the familiar, easy, scalable, inexpensive tooling that we have learned to and appreciate taking advantage of in the MSP channel. Because that CUI enclave architecture and the decisions that the business makes around CUI is that the scoping of it and how far out you have to say that yes, CUI exists here, CUI does not exist here. If you don't have segmentation, it's your client, it's their business. You usually want to treat it as a whole entire entity. But in this realm of CMMC, you can't take it, it's not wise to take that approach because if you don't do segmentation, if you're not intentionally segmenting stuff out, then everything is in scope, every device, every user, every service. Um, and that just makes it harder. It makes it more challenging if you don't do that. Because if you think about it, just uh, dollars and cents, numbers of licensing, you may have a client that wants a CMMC contract. They want to be able to pass assessment. They are very likely, in most situations, it may only be 12%, 10% of their business. And it only may be 5 or 6 of their employees out of 200 that actually touch and interact with it. It is going to be much simpler, much faster, much cheaper. Segment them all out, create the CU enclave just for that portion of the business, and you're going to put CMMC Ready and Central in there, and you'll use remote desktop facilitation through the Central interface to go access those specific enclave of devices. Then you just treat the rest of the environment the way you've already been treating them.
Well, it's funny because I've had a few partners ask me, well, when I set this up, should I be doing this one CMMC and central per customer and segmenting it that way? Shared instance versus single instance. I'm glad you're bringing this up. Or do I, in fact, run this as a multi-tenant environment, one single instance with multiple CMMC customers in there? So if you could expand on that,
Yeah.
that's because the architecture of this is a little, I would say, muddy at this point.
Right. I think the first question to ask yourself is how many CMMC dependent contracts are out there for you as a business if you're an MSP? Because that's going to be is it worth the time and the effort to go for a shared instance so that you get the familiar benefits of scalability and having everything managed in one location? But if you take that approach, then there needs to be enough business to support that, because that's going to force you as an MSP to get your own CMMC uh, level two C3PAO engagement running so that you can be assessed and certified. Um, versus the approach of single tenancy, where you're going to set up a single central instance for a client in their CUI enclave, and you're now going to be in scope of their assessment. So there's not money for you to spend, there's money for you to make in that engagement. Whereas if you go the shared instance, there's going to be a lot more money there's more going to be more money and more time for you to put out front. And also, you are now going to be fighting with everybody else that needs a C3PAO engagement or an assessor engagement, because those waiting lines exist. And I've heard stories from 3 months to 6 months to get an assessor in, not even somebody that's going to actually do the final accreditation from a licensed C3PAO, just a trained professional that has the either a registered professional or an advanced registered professional under the Cyber AB program, of just somebody who says, yes, I know how this is supposed to be set up and I can help you do it. Even those individuals are backlogged by months. So making the decision on which one you're going to do, shared instance has a lot of possibility, but it's front loaded with a lot of risk and a lot of work and a lot of money being spent. Whereas the single instance, if you're an MSP, it's you build it for that client's environment, you manage within it, you're within scope of their assessment, and you're riding your client's coattails through the process, which is going to be cheaper and faster.
Yeah, and I always get asked about cost, so I might as well just share a little bit here. Usually, you can run a FedGov Azure instance. I forget the actual spec. It's like DS4. I can't remember, but it's roughly around 350 a month USD. So, um, not cheap, but obviously it's not killer either in that single instance. And again, when you're doing these contracts, obviously these are like pass through costs to doing business.
Right. And it's now, if you're in it to win it, then there's a compelling reason to go for the shared instance and putting yourself through that third party, that C3PAO assessment so that you can be certified and then you can go out and start providing. Um, and of course, there's always going to be you are at the whim of the assessors and the accreditors. What they say goes. If they don't like something, you have to work with them. Um, And then there's also, we talked about it earlier, with, you have your choice, depending on the scope of the engagement, and how the environment is set up. Essential will either be treated as an SPA by the assessor and auditor, or it's going to be treated as a CUI asset. Um, with our Adlumin product, this is another one of the things we're making available, and with the eye towards CMMC alignment. Um, Adlumin is going to be considered and treated as a security protection asset in most engagements. And since we have um, set it up so that we have technical controls, administrative controls in place around, um, by default, not being able to retrieve CUI data in our MDR client environments that we're providing the MDR service to, that simplifies and narrows the scope of the assessment and shrinks it down to it being yep, you're not bringing in CUI, you're not processing it, you're not transmitting it. The environment is set up to keep CUI where it's supposed to be. That just shrinks it down so much. And again, because you're shrinking that scope, it's preventing you from having to be doing something as drastic as saying, oh, well, we've got to build out an entire SOC system and an entire set of SOC analysts by client. And having them again, it's the degrees of the scope. Adlumin is a smaller scope. It's treated as a security protection asset. It's much easier and faster to get through your assessments. And that together is, that's the enabled story here of what we're trying to do to help you align to CMMC. Enable within central endpoint management, it's, being able to drive the compliance initiatives for the environment and as a total with a platform itself that can align with the compliance demands of the environment. And Adlumin is another way of adding additional security controls, operational security, monitoring, alerting for that environment, again, to drive stronger alignment to the total goals and requirements of CMMC. And I've seen a few questions come in about this, and I wanted to, it kind of addresses it here in multiple ways, is, preparing for that C3PAO assessment is, if you have not engaged with an auditor yet, if you haven't, contacted an assessor or an auditor, you're not in line, you've not, signed a letter of intent with anybody to start out the processes, you still may not know exactly what you're in for. So if you're an MSP, what you should probably be expecting is that, the assessor is going to use three methods kind of figuring things out. They're going to review the MSP and environment documentations, the policies, the procedures, the evidence artifacts. You got to be able to produce that and show that for them. If you don't have a written standard operating procedure, if you do not have a written incident response plan, if you do not have a written incident response playbook for certain things, they're going to, yep, you're deficient. It goes into POAM, and it's more work that you have to do. The interview sections will be, they're going to be talking to the IT people that are responsible for managing and implementing these things and other relevant roles. And those individuals have to be knowledgeable to what their responsibilities are underneath CMMC. And then the testing, the assessor verifying that the controls are in place and they're operating according to your documented procedures. And then that'll also, and part of that, the interview part, who is the assessor going to want to interview? Be prepared. Your technicians and engineers that are running your central instance, they're going to be part of that conversation. The security analyst or SOC team, so the alerts that are being generated by Adlumin, who on your team is receiving those? How are they processing them? How are they responding to them? Your compliance lead, whether that is, because most of the time it's going to be you and your client going through the assessment together. You're going to need to be able to do that as well, to be prepared to have that conversation about triage, escalation, and incident response.
Well, I think it just aids with this, but it says, Roger had a question, and I think it's really good. So the company I support is CMMC 1/2 compliant. I, the MSP, will have to be compliant under my responsibilities.
There will be work for you to do, yes. Your responsibilities and your obligations are going to be different whenever you're included in their assessment versus you're getting your own assessment. There's nothing that dictates and says that you as an MSP must undergo and get your own C3PAO engagement and them to audit you. But if you're going to want to continue to provide services to clients that do have to go through that, then your business practices, your operations are going to have to align with it.
Otherwise, they're just going to choose somebody else.
Right. Yeah, because they want the businesses that are subject to this are looking for MSPs that can come in and say, yes, I can help you get through your assessment and your accreditation. I will be here to help you do the work. I will be here to help you, to rebuild the environment, to change your architecture, to move you from this local SharePoint setup up into AWS Gov. That's all for you there to do as the MSP underneath their scope and their assessment. So we've hit our time, but we'll give it another minute or so for some additional questions to come through if anybody has those.
Well,
Um,
I want to read you a few if that's okay.
yeah, sure.
Because I love this one. Because I hear it all the time. Matthew, does the SIM and SOC team have to be US based for UCMMC 2?
And that is if it is CUI assets, if it's treated as security protection assets, that starts opening it up. That starts making it allowable in certain situations.
Right.
Uh, CMMC level 3, yeah, no. CMMC level 2, it will pass the sniff test for most assessors and most auditors. There may be a very unique edge case out there or scenario one time where just because of the nature of the business, how their infrastructure is set up or whatever, and they've got to just operate that way, then there might be a blocker there on a SIM and a SOC having international support teams.
Right.
But because we are, for the Adlumin perspective, it's by default, CUI cannot be ingested into the environment. So we're fine for, 98%, 99% of the engagements you might run into. But again, you're at the mercy of the assessor and the accreditor.
Now I'm going to let you answer this. I was going to answer it, but I want you to answer this. Endsight. If you're an Endsight partner, is there an MCMMC only Endsight, or is something like that coming to Endsight, or is this just for End Central?
So that is firmly in the realm of, if for Insight to be usable within a CMMC subject environment, it would have to be FedRAMP.
Yes.
So that is right now, it's a hard no because we do not make it available as a FedRAMP accredited offering in a FedRAMP accredited data center. So for right now, it is a hard no. You want those capabilities. You want to enter this arena with Enable. Right now, it's going to be the Central CMMC ready version. Not that it's, again, futures and looking out and our plans of, our larger compliance goals and working towards FedRAMP for different solutions that might be out there in the future. But right now, today is your only option.
Well, Brian, my good friend Brian Ventura, brought up that rumor has it that FedRAMP certified version of Take Control is coming. Is that true or false? What I can tell you is a lot of the work is being done. FedRAMP is a pretty arduous journey. There's a lot to do in that respect. So I would say right now TBD. I didn't want to give you a kind of a true or false on that, but we'll call it TBD.
See. All right. And is there any more? Let me see if there's any in here that we haven't gotten to yet. Right.
Andrew has a good one that I can answer. Will Enable be providing ways to export, import rules, service templates, filters, and other settings we have in our existing and central server and want in obviously the new one or the CMMC? What I could tell you is like at least service templates can be exported. So there's some things you can do. Obviously, automation could be obviously exported as well, but not. I would say not everything, Andrew.
Yeah, your service monitors, service monitors, the service templates. A lot of those are going to be XML exports, I believe, and then just import right back into the new instance.
Right.
And I think this was worth clarifying a little bit. We kind of we've addressed it, but just I think it is an important thing of, if a company that you support is CMMC 2 is their target, Yes, you are absolutely. It is easiest for you to go underneath their scope of their assessment with your own defined responsibilities that comes out of that. Um, those responsibilities and defining them are part of the assessment process. You don't feel like you should come in and have those all defined and ready and shaped because they're going to be defined and approved by what the assessors and auditors uncover. Not that you can't get a head start on it, that you can't start producing evidence, start working on implementing and getting your teams familiar with the tools. Um, and I think that's good for the key takeaways. The phase one is active. You got to start doing it. If you're not doing it now, you are behind. The businesses you support are behind. Um, and that the starting to generate evidence right now is one of the things that the assessors want to see. They don't want to show up on a Friday, or they don't want to show up on a Monday and you started creating all the documentation and all of the log evidence on the Friday before. They're going to be like, okay, you're not on top of this. I'm going to have to go through this with a more discerning eye because you're obviously not prepared for this. Any final questions in there, Jason, that we should get?
Oh, I think that's it. There was one question. If you have multiple CMMC clients, should you as the MSP bring yourself to the highest level of those combined?
Yes, that would be yes. If you're going to go for like uh, regardless of whether you're choosing to do a single instance or a shared instance, and you're going to go get your own assessment, your operations, your processes, your procedures, it's just like any other compliance. You don't build different programs for each different compliance framework you're shooting towards. You build out your program to the commonalities of them all. And for this, it would be, for CMMC, the best approach is you build out to the commonality of everything that has to be done underneath that CMMC level that you're targeting. It just simply becomes oh, client A, your CMMC level one, here's your package. CMMC level two, here's your package. But your internal operations are going to be the same.
Cool. That looks like it's a wrap.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure, Jason. Hope
Yeah.
everybody enjoyed. This is a sticky wicket of a subject. There's all kinds of ways to get tripped up on it. Cannot overemphasize the importance of peer knowledge exchange. Find the other MSPs that are in this, that are doing it, have done it, make friends, and explore certifications. You're going to need your employees to be certified for this, whether you're an MST, IT professional, internal team, somebody on the team's going to be needs to be certified for this type of work. Registered practitioner and advanced registered practitioner underneath the Cyber AB. Go Google those. Those are probably the best places to start for an official certification for skills.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. My name's Jason Murphy. Obviously, Lewis Pope, head nerd for security. Thanks. And we will see you on the next webinar. Take care, everybody.